Huddly hey, comics fans. This is my comics review for the month of, what are we in right now? April. Now, it wasn't a big month for new releases, and this is videos a little late in the month because although I didn't find many new ones, I went back diving into some back issues on stuff, and I found more than I bargained for, let's say. I actually left some at the store that I wanted to get, but I had to cut myself off. But we'll start with the new stuff first. And the new stuff is all Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first one up is issue 4 of the Armageddon game, The Alliance. If you'll remember, they forgot to put in my issue 4 in my monthly subscription. So I've already reviewed 5, I think. So we're going backwards on this one. And in this one, after Donatello uses his move that freezes time and whatever, it shows him go through this portal to the future where he sees himself as an old man turtle, and he's lost all of his brothers, and he's trying to figure out a way to do something. And in the meantime, Venus and Bludgeon are kind of training together and talking and stuff like that, when I forget the Hawk guy, he bursts in and says, "Bludgeon, what are you doing with her?" He's all upset, but then they magically teleport away, and they're brought into this future timeline where Donatello has also gone. And in it, Bludgeon and Venus see their future selves all happy and kind of peaceful and stuff like that. But Donatello's feverishly working on reversing things, and before long, that big shark thing that comes out of the portal that we saw earlier in the series attacks, and future Bludgeon and Venus are like, "No, current Venus and Bludgeon, you have to go. If you guys die here, this will never be. And Armageddon's always going to be chasing us no matter what, so you guys have to go and be safe." So Donatello finally finds a way to reverse this time thing and sends them back to a place where they'll be safe. And that is when Karai approaches them to try and enlist them in her fight against the Rat King and everything, and whatever it is she has planned. We know she's been gathering all these different allies, right? And she approaches these two, but they, after a bit of a disagreement at first, politely decline to aid her, and that's kind of the way the issue ends. Next up, they missed issue number 5 of this, so we're on to number 6. It is just the Armageddon game, the main series of this. And in it, Mutant Town is under attack by the Utroms that are all have taken over Triceraton bodies and are using them as their muscle. So it's pandemonium. Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, Jenica are all fighting off the Utroms, and the Utroms end up getting the drop on the turtles. They're just overwhelming numbers, and the Utroms also have air support. They have airships, so the turtles like how do we fight them in the sky? We can't fly, right? In the meantime, Baxter Stockman along with what's lady, the red Satan looking girl, I always forget her name. They're kind of weighing their options on what they should do, because their first stab at taking down Mutant Town and the turtles with General Krang went awry, but now Chirel has taken Krang's place and is attacking the turtles. So they're kind of figuring out how else they're gonna make this happen, make this destruction happen. So basically, the fight goes on and on. It's an issue more full of action, and eventually the fake turtles that were impersonating the real turtles, they show up and kind of help turn the tide in the favor of the Utroms. And in the end, it looks like the turtles are going to be done for, and they got the drop on them. But all of a sudden, Cuddly the Cowlick shows up, and Leonardo reappears with those allies he brought back. I forget the name of them. She's got like purple skin, and there's a whole team of them. I forget the name of their group, but they show up and help turn the tide back the other way. And as the issue closes off, we see the kind of like the metalhead turtle suit that General Krang was inside of when he died kind of reboot, and then kind of electrify Krang and bring him back to life, and he wakes up and he's like, it's go time, right? So it looks like Krang is going to be back in the game very soon. The last new issue is The Last Ronin, The Lost Years, issue number 2. There's 2 things going on in this, one in the present with April O'Neil and her daughter Casey Jones, as Casey is watching this new batch of young turtles go about their chores, and the way they're doing it, these young turtles are having disagreements, and they're making some of them are ganging up on the other ones. So she's kind of watching how they're going about this and what's wrong. And then when they eventually kind of get her to come help out, she tells them a story about her dad Casey Jones and the Ninja Turtles when they were out on patrol one night, and about doing the right thing. And so she explains this story to them to try and get them to work together more and help each other out, rather than, well, no, I'm doing this, these are my orders, this is what I'm responsible for, you know, screw you, right? That sort of thing. So she kind of relays a lesson to them. In the meantime, it's a flashback to Michelangelo when he first was finding his way after all of his brothers died. So we know what happened in the first issue when he was kind of hiding away in that village, and he was eventually discovered and kind of had the shit beaten out of him and had to fight off these guys. So he leaves that place and tries to find solace somewhere else. Ends up running into this old man, I forget his name, Master something, and this guy helps Michelangelo kind of accept his current state of being, and helps retrain him in some martial arts ways, and kind of gives him some guidance on what he should do. And what he should do is go back to where he left, because that town and that region was under kind of subjugation by the guy that kind of leads those gang of thugs that ended up wailing on Michelangelo. And this person goes by the name of Deathworm. So Michelangelo heads back to that region in search of Deathworm. He doesn't find him in this issue, but he finds a lot of his thugs, beats the Christ out of them, and gets leads on where he can find Deathworm. So he's on the hunt for this bad boy as the issue comes to a close. Now, I only found 2 Turtles back issues when I went, and the first one is issue 18 of the OG Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the late 80s. These are all in black and white too inside, by the way, if you've never seen the original Turtles comics. In this one, the Turtles are going to Japan to visit the homeland, right, where their master is from, and when they get there, they get some guidance from a young kid because they're starving, on where to eat. So he takes them to this local restaurant. Now, in the meantime, what's cooking in this region is a guy, and 2 guys by the name of Gorku, I think, and Bean Curd are running this scheme in the region where they're forcing all the restaurants in the area to buy their shitty food products. It's kind of like a protection scheme, really, but it's a different way of doing it, right? They're making money off all these restaurants for whatever reason, right? So, but this restaurant they're going to is the last one that's holding out and not accepting this nonsense from these 2 thugs. So, as the Turtles show up and go in to eat at this place, some muscle from these 2 guys show up to try and shake the restaurant owner down, and the Turtles basically fight them off and send them packing, sort of thing. So they go in for a meal afterwards, and everybody's like, oh, thank you so much, whatever. In the meantime, the owner of this restaurant, his nephew comes back and meets the Turtles and stuff like that. And soon enough, Bean, Curd, and Gorku show up saying, like, no, like, we sent our guys here to get you guys on board, and that's gonna happen, right? And the owner's nephew is like, no, Turtles, you stay out of this. This is a family affair. I'm gonna take these guys. Yeah, and he goes at him and takes them out. Gorku and Bean Curd don't take this lightly, and well, the Turtles go out sightseeing and all that stuff. The thugs burn the restaurant down. So the Turtles show up afterwards and go like, what the hell happened? So they help rebuild the restaurant, that sort of thing. And what eventually ends up happening, because they're still not playing ball with Gorku and Bean Curd, so those 2 go to some sort of like gladiator pits or whatever and get this giant mammoth of a guy who hates turtles coincidentally, to join their thugs and go after the turtles and the people that run this restaurant and finally put this issue to rest once and for all. But of course, the turtles, you can't beat the turtles, and this guy finds that out the hard way. Restaurant saved. Bean, Kurt, and Gorku are sent packing. All's well. That ends well. The other one I found was issue 41 of that OG series as well. In this one, it's kind of a weird one. It's the turtles have been fighting crime, you know, so they're all tired. So they all fall asleep and have weird dreams. The first one, Leonardo, his dream is that he's like a cool guy in high school, and but his teacher ends up like turning into like a mutant, whatever, and he ends up having to fight him, and eventually the teacher turns into like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's like, what the fuck? And that's where his dream ends. Raphael, he falls asleep reading comics, and so his dream is centered on two villains that take the main stage in the comic books he reads. So he basically gets in an engagement with these two guys and has to deal with them, so to speak. Then we move on to Donatello. His is like the Ninja Turtles kind of story gets out, and so comic books and TV shows are made about the Ninja Turtles, and everybody knows about them and loves them, so they go out trying to fight crime, but they can't get anything done because they're always being mobbed by their fans, and it's just exhausting. So they end up not fighting crime anymore and just staying in the lair, and they end up getting fat and out of shape. Then we move on to Master Splinter. His is really short. It's just kind of a lesson in wisdom as he has a dinner with Albert Einstein, Alfred Hitchcock, and then some sort of samurai general or something like that. And then the last one is Michelangelo. He, in his dream, he is a rock star, but some guy that is, some villain that is anti-rock shows up and tries to take Michelangelo down, and Michelangelo's like, nuh-uh. And yeah, so not a surprise that Michelangelo's dream revolves around something cool, because he is the best turtle. I do also really like Donatello, though. I'm kind of split between the two. But either way, all four are awesome in their own way. And the turtles in general are just fantastic. And that's why I buy all of these. The majority of the back issues I found, though, fell in the Transformers universe. A bunch from a series I hadn't been collecting yet, and two from one that I'd started a long time ago and have just been picking away at. So the two of the current series I'm already working on. The first one is issue number 2 of Dreamwave's the Transformers series. And in issue 2, we find the military has dragged Optimus Prime's body out of the Pacific Ocean, I think it was, and they have Spike Witwicky come in. He's got this a piece of the Matrix of leadership around his neck, like as a necklace that Prime gave him, and he uses that to kind of reactivate Prime, because Prime was showing no signs of life. And then the military starts talking to Prime about helping them out and stuff like that, because what has happened is we see a giant shipping crate land at a refinery in the Arctic. Or no, I think Prime was pulled out of the Arctic Ocean. Either way, doesn't matter. But we see this crate dropped in the Arctic outside this refinery, and then we see a bunch of different Transformers. We see some Decepticons like Soundwave, but then we also see some Autobots like Grimlock, and I think Prowl is in there. And Bumblebee, I think, was in there too. They come storming out of this shipping crate, and all of them together start attacking the humans in this refinery and tearing it to shreds. Then what we find out why they're doing this is some guy is kind of like running an auction, where he is showing all of these powerful people around the world that he is controlling these robots, the perfect killing machines. He has them under his control somehow. So he's like, okay, who wants one? Who wants one, and what are you willing to pay, right? So obviously these Transformers are under some sort of mind control. so then Prime is kind of tasked with stopping this. So he takes his matrix of leadership to the ocean and holds it up, sends out a message, and then we see a bunch of Transformers rise off the ocean floor. Like I think Jazz is down there, I think Huffer was down there, a whole bunch come out. Superion, all the aerial bots were down there, and so then they go on a quest to stop this current activity from the ones that are under some sort of mind control there. The other one is a couple issues later, number 4, and in this one, some sort of battle occurred in issue number 3, and we pick up in issue number 4 in the aftermath of that. And what happened in this battle is some sort of dome was formed in an explosion, but it protected the Transformers. So we see Optimus Prime kind of crawl out of it, and then a bunch of other Autobots as well, Wheeljack, and Superion, and they're like, whoa, that was fucked up. And so they're like, we got to regroup, we got to figure out what that was all about. And in the meantime, we see a US Army sub or Navy sub get attacked underwater, and soon enough we find out that it is Devastator, and he is heading to the Pacific US coast. And once he's there, he just starts wreaking havoc. Megatron is there as well, a bunch of Decepticons are there, and they just start tearing the Pacific coast apart. So the Autobots are rushing to catch up to them, and Superion is the Autobots' greatest weapon against Devastator. So we got the aerial bots there in their giant robot mode to engage with Devastator, and the rest of the Autobots to engage the smaller Decepticons, and that's kind of how that one ends. So I'd have to go back and reread the whole series in a row to kind of realize how it all fits together. But I love these more modern Transformers comics. Just the artwork is so amazing, like how they draw these robots. It's unbelievable. Next up, this was kind of a prequel to a series called Infiltration. It's an IDW Transformers comic, number 0. And in it, we see this young girl kind of on a Greyhound bus, or I guess, is it a Greyhound bus in the US? I don't know. Somewhere in the Arizona wastelands or whatever. And she is looking for a mark on the bus to kind of steal from and get some riches. So she ends up stealing from this old man, and then she ends up afterwards getting off the bus and kind of walking away and hitchhiking. This kind of hippie dude and a young hippie dude guy in a van picks her up, and he's like, oh, I can take you as far as here or whatever. And then they start talking about weird stuff, aliens, that kind of thing. And she's kind of all of a sudden thinking, like, is this guy a weirdo, right? But then soon enough, they happen upon the bus that she was on earlier. It's crashed, it's had an accident, and she's like, oh, what's happening here? And then all of a sudden, this fighter jet flies overhead and is blasting away at them, and she's like, what the fuck? She doesn't realize what she stole from this old man on the bus was some sort of intel that the Decepticons are looking for and trying to eliminate. So the rest of the issue is just her and this guy trying to escape from the Decepticons, and that kind of is how it's left leading into whatever the main series is going to look like. So now the next batch are all from one series, the Transformers by IDW. We got issue number 1, issue number 2, issue number 3, issue number 4, issue number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and I had to cut myself off at number 10. They did have more, but I was like, I got to practice some self-control here, right? So this series, it starts off by describing how the Transformers destroyed their home planet of Cybertron in their civil war, and they've basically almost done the same on planet Earth. And in the last 2 years, after the fighting stopped on Earth, the Transformers have basically gone into hiding and are just basically living in their machine modes on Earth, trying to stay under the radar. And because the humans have rallied, and all Transformers are bad news to them, so they'll catch and contain any of them. So soon enough, we see one of the Stunticons break down, reveal himself in the search for Energon, and the human team is mobilized to take him down. But also Prowl, the Autobot Prowl, can't let it go, and he decides to intervene and reveals himself. And in the process, both the Decepticon breakdown and the Autobot Prowl are taken into custody. And back at the Autobot base, Optimus Prime's like, well, we got to mobilize a team to get Prowl out of captivity and get him back. And so they do. They mobilize a mission, and Hot Rod, sorry, leads the mission, and ultimately in the end they get Prowl back, but Ironhide is destroyed, and Optimus Prime is kind of, you know, guilt-ridden, right? His one of his best friends, longest-serving friends, has perished, and so Optimus Prime kind of has had enough, and he decides to turn himself into the humans. So he approaches the humans and says, let's talk, you know. So the rest of the Autobots are kind of left in limbo, saying like, Prime just gave up and turned himself in, like, what the fuck? So then there's kind of two split camps within the Autobot team. Hot Rod on one side, Bumblebee on the other. Bumblebee saying, we got to stay here, we got to help Prime, we got to, you know, do our job here. Whereas Hot Rod is like, we owe this planet nothing, like, who cares what happens to it, let's just leave, you know. So a group splinters off with him, and they want to find a way to leave, whereas Bumblebee and his little contingent, which includes, I think, Cliffjumper, Ratchet, Wheeljack, want to stay and stick around and see what happens. So Hot Rod tries to get Omega Supreme to take them up into space and find a new place to live, but Omega Supreme's is Optimus Prime coming? And they're like, no. And he's like, well, I go where Prime goes, so he sticks around. So Hot Rod and his little contingent strategize to find their direction, to find what they're going to do. In the meantime, they meet a few Decepticons, and kind of, after fighting a bit at first, they decide, like, the war's over, like, we all probably want the same thing, we want to get the hell out of here, like, why fight? So we got one of the Combaticons, Swindle, one of the Constructicons, Scrapper, as well as Octane, join these Autobots in trying to come up with a way to get off planet and that sort of thing. So in the meantime, Prime is talking with the military, who one of the teams is led by Spike, and he's trying to find some sort of a reconciliation with the humans, and trying to explain that, you know what, we're not the bad guys, you know, like, we understand much destruction was caused, but we were trying to help you guys and planet Earth. So he's trying to kind of come up with a way to make the Autobots safe and help, you know. Now, all of a sudden, a Cybertronian ship touches down by Autobot camp, and they're like, what the hell is this? Ultra Magnus comes out, talks to Bumblebee, and says, I'm here to investigate what's happening on this planet, because things are getting out of hand, and I hear that Ironhide's dead, so he's here to investigate all that stuff. And Bumblebee's like, well, Hot Rod led that mission, he'll have all the info on it. And Ultra Magnus is like, well, where is he? He's not here. And Bumblebee's like, no, he's split, he's leaving. And Ultra Magnus is like, didn't you let him go, blah blah blah, like, he's by the letter of the law, right? He's kind of a dick in this story. So then Ultra Magnus goes off in search of Hot Rod and his team, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens. Like, Thundercracker enters the scene and joins up with Hot Rod and the rest of those Decepticons. Ultra Magnus finds Hot Rod and finds out, you're working with Decepticons? Like, what the fuck? And Hot Rod's like, ease up, like, it's not a big deal, like, nothing's going on here, right? So Ultra Magnus takes off, and he says, this isn't over. And eventually Swindle betrays Hot Rod and the Autobots. His scheme all along was to find a way to reactivate all the Stunticons and form Menasor, which he eventually does. and Menasor takes the fight to Hot Rod and all those guys. So Prime and his charges, Prime eventually reaches an agreement with the military, and the Autobots mobilize to fight Menasor and take him down and end that threat. And all the while, Ultra Magnus is spouting the law of the letter of the law at them and everything, and they're just like, would you shut up already? Like, come on. It also shows Megatron is in some sort of vat where he's being held. I don't know if he's being healed or if he's being contained. We don't know who's doing it, but he's kind of glossing over some of his Decepticons who aren't on planet and who are just kind of scavenging to stay alive. Like Razorclaw, the leader of the Predacons, is up there. Starscream, with the matrix of leadership around a chain around his neck, is being, you know, kind of the boss. Soundwave is remaining loyal on the ship, waiting for Megatron to return. Shockwave is in his lab, just doing whatever the fuck he wants with all of his experiments. So they're kind of in disarray, and Megatron's kind of pissed, but he's like, when I return, this will all be sorted out. So that's kind of how that goes. And then eventually the Combaticons enter the fray. There's tensions in North Korea. They believe something is happening there, but they don't have any idea yet, like the governments around the world. And so what it turns out to be is that the Combaticons, or at least 3 of them, because Swindle's off with dealing with Hot Rod and all those guys, the leader Onslaught, as well as Brawl and Vortex, are helping the leader of North Korea produce Energon, which benefits them because they can stay in prime form and live, right? So eventually the Autobots plan to mobilize and take the fight to the Combaticons and to North Korea. But right before they're about to mobilize, the U.S. military, or the U.S. president, somebody in a high position, I don't know if it's president or not, says anybody working with any Transformers of any type will be labeled a traitor to the country and will face the appropriate consequences, right? And so Spike, who is about to leave with Optimus Prime and the other Autobots on this mission to North Korea to deal with the Combaticons, is like, shit, now we got to change the parameters, right? Like, we'll pretend we never heard this message, but in the meantime, you guys are going to pull this mission off without transforming into your robot modes. So nobody will say, oh, the Transformers were here and you guys were working with them. They'll be in their car modes the whole time. Nobody will be able to tell they were robots, sort of thing. So they go to North Korea and they run into the Combaticons, but because they can't transform and utilize their robot modes, it doesn't go all that well. And both Broadside and Jetfire are injured pretty good in the fighting, and that's kind of where these 10 issues kind of leave off. So it's a really cool storyline, and I find the artwork in the first handful of issues was drawn more like the movie characters looked, with all the really more realistic, real life kind of all the little details and angles and stuff. Whereas the last few issues, the artistry kind of switched over to a more cartoony kind of look. So I found that kind of interesting as they change, I guess, artists and stuff at some point there. So, but a really fun batch of issues. I liked getting all 10 of them in a row right away, because it keeps that whole storyline kind of fresh, and you get the whole continuity of it. And like I said, with these more modern Transformers comics, the artwork is just so stupendous, especially when they're drawing these combiners in their big giant robot form, and the detail and the crazy things they can draw and color in these issues is just insane. It makes me jealous. But anyways, that is my April comics batch. For May, I'm going to make sure I get all the ones and they don't miss anything this time around. So I'll make sure to piece everything back together fully. And depending on how many new ones I get, again, I might go dumpster diving into the back issues and see if I can pull any new old ones out of the hat as well. So until mid-May, I bid you adieu. Meow.